You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each week, our team discusses news and events from this past week, as well as previewing the week ahead, covering Mexico-based promotions and top independents, along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are available on all major podcast streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Speaker, and Podbay. Also, we are streamed at thechairshot.com, your source for wrestling news and analysis. My name is Miranda Morales. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, and I don't do this show alone. No. I do this with my two co-hosts, and so let me bring them in. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty great. How's it going for you, Miranda?
It is going very, very well. I'm excited for this week's show. We got so much to talk about. I cannot wait. So without further ado, let's bring in the third member of this trio team, and that's who?
Who?
It's the one and only Brendan Barr.
That's who?
Yeah. Hey, how we doing?
Pretty darn good. Yes, I'm refraining from cussing. Just in case that whole YouTube thing. I don't know. I mean, this is revealing behind the curtain. However, we've had some kind of age restriction for our YouTube, version of this cast. Not that it's a video, it is just the audio, but, apparently we're continuing to have troubles where you have to, log in to YouTube with your age. And so we've been joking that it was the one time Brendan may have cussed.
Yeah.
That could have been. They were tired of our poop. That's all I said. They were just tired of our poop. But I promise you that the Sam Adonis interview, which is where I found it again when one of my friends wanted to listen to it, does not contain any adult content. Parents, it is fine to let your children listen to this interview.
Yes. Sam Adonis may be puro rudo, but he keeps it PG. So.
Yeah.
Family friendly.
That's what we aim for. Yes, our interview with Sam Adonis is available on luchacentral.com and all of the major podcast streaming platforms, as well as at thechairshot.com. It was this past Wednesday's episode of Chairshot Radio. So make sure you listen to that interview. A fantastic one with Sam Adonis, who continues to, take the independent wrestling scene by storm. He may be coming to a town near you, or we may see him again somewhere, I don't know, in Mexico. Who knows? But a fantastic interview with Sam Adonis that is now available for all of you to listen. But before we get into this week's news, last week we did a birthday shout out to Jerry Villagrana, a friend of the show, Lucha Libre photographer, and just amazing human being. This week, the birthday shout out goes to the boss man himself, Mr. Kevin Kleinrock.
El Jefe.
El Jefe. The boss man. Big happy birthday to him. Hopefully him and his family had a wonderful time celebrating it. Kevin is, really the man who runs the place at luchacentral.com and Mass Republic and so much more. The man has his hands in so many projects, but it's because he's that darn good.
Yeah.
So
also, he never sleeps.
That's true. He works like 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
But it pays off. He's had a great week. I don't want to give any of his stuff away, but yeah, he's had a great week. So it's nice to see how the hard work has really paid off for Kevin.
Yes.
And especially on his birthday week.
Yes,
right?
Birthday week is really celebratory, but I know we, as a trio, greatly appreciate Kevin and the work that he puts in to luchacentral.com and Mass Republic. We are fans of his, absolutely, and he's just amazing to work with. So if anyone deserves a great birthday day and week, it is Kevin Kleinrock.
Yeah, happy birthday, Kevin.
Feliz cumpleaños! All right. Well, again, we talked about how packed this week's show is, so we're going to jump to it. Brendan, take us through the road back to shows.
Awesome. Okay, so Mexico City is in fact still green, but there's still weirdness afoot. They are about to either, by the time you've heard this, they will have raised the limits at Arena Mexico again, so they will be more full-looking crowds if you watch CMLL events in particular. But other things are going on. Arena Puebla has they've teased that they want to have a return date, but they've not announced things, and there are a couple different sources. I had to turn to Cubs fan over on Lucha blog for some of this information. Hopefully we have some follow-up on Lucha Central, but if you want to read about it right now, I'm afraid I have to send you over to that other guy who also does pretty good coverage, but Lucha Central. Go to Lucha Central. Anyway, what he's found two theories is that there's some people involved in management that say they need more than the current 500 fans that are allowed in Arena Puebla in order to break even on the shows, which is a perfectly valid and reasonable stance to take, to not open your doors if you're just going to hemorrhage money. The other theory is that if the government inspects the building, they may find that it is not up to code and hasn't been for some time, which would increase other expenses. And that, I mean, the rumors are that goes all the way back to one of the last earthquakes. So, also about money, but a lot less reasonable and understandable. So, it's hard to say, but it's good to know that we're back to normal wrestling politics as opposed to anything COVID related at this point. Arena Puebla does have an anniversary coming up in the near future, so I'm honestly expecting that there will be a date for something announced soon, even if it's not at Arena Puebla. They might do something somewhere else, but we'll see. I mean, that's just me speculating. That's not even a thing anybody's talked about out loud. But also talking about returns to wrestling, our friends at Pro Wrestling Revolution, down, the ones that do the lucha masks, and we've talked to about what an awesome school they run and all that fun stuff. I would call them friends of the show, but at this point it's kind of a one-sided friendship. We say really nice things about them, and they say thank you.
A friendly relationship.
Yeah, we're acquaintances. That's maybe one day we'll get to the next level. Really sounds like describing my dating life in high school. I'm having some flashbacks, so please continue.
But I'm super excited that they are now teasing a return. So 9/25 in San Jose, and the graphic contains LA Park, who also is working on a return to wrestling after a struggle with COVID, so that it's all ties together. It's like poetry. But I'm super excited that they're finally teasing a show. It's San Jose, so I might be able to make it down there. I will investigate that possibility, but I will one way or another get results for you on this one, and we will look forward to covering that, because as you might have gathered, we kind of like them on this show.
Yeah.
Definitely exciting for them.
And then earlier in the week, Andrade did a interview with Hugo Savinovich on Lucha Libre Online. I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. I don't know. I know Miranda is a pretty regular listener to that. So if there's anything that I seem to have missed in that, go ahead and bring it up, Miranda. But the big highlights were about Federation Wrestling. He said that he and Rush had to back out because they weren't given the money and tickets they needed, airline tickets they needed to make the show. So their reasons for the announcements of logistical difficulties now becomes much more clear as to why they had to back out. It's a perfectly reasonable thing for your top tier talent to have a cutoff date for at least the airline ticket to fly you into the city you're supposed to be working in, because they have to be able to plan their travel arrangements. So it's interesting on that. Roosh has been still very positive about that. Again, the speculation seems to be is because Roosh was in some way associated with this show, probably talent relations sort of character. So he may very well be trying to keep the positivity of the brand alive, even though there doesn't seem to be a lot of future right now. And cynical wrestling fans are already kind of counting this promotion as being dead in the water. And then just while we're on Andrade, it's kind of interesting to me to note that he's done a few shows in the States, and people have talked about that. None of those shows inside the United States have sold out. I am really honestly kind of hopeful that AEW and AAA will do some things to kind of help him get the momentum back that WWE clearly cut away from him. It's always been the one thing that I heard when they, especially when AEW announced him, they just viewed him as a WWE mid-card cast-off, a lot of these American fans. And we here, as Lucha fans, know much better, but I also have to acknowledge that very few people in the United States have seen that. So his bookings in California and Texas, etc., have not been producing as much. I just thought that was kind of interesting to note. That's again, Cubs fan doing the collating on that. But, speaking of of selling out shows though, Bandito's Gym, the one we've been talking about a few times, has had a few shows that have, definitely sold out with huge names. So now they're starting a promotion there called Big Lucha with their first show for July 17th. So now you can actually potentially see on the internet shows. If you see something from a promotion called Big Lucha, that's going to be out of Bandito's Gym. And, the guy knows a few people in the wrestling world. He might have a few big names on his show, not just his students.
Yeah. Be a fun watch.
Right? More announcements. DTU's coming back with shows. The beach party that they had, I'd missed the previous announcement somehow, but they rescheduled it for July 18th. We talked about DTU a lot during the early days of the lockdown. They had very visually impressive ways of doing without fan shows. They did a ranch show. They did a poolside show. This sounds like they're doing something in that same sort of vein where they're going to have a more visually impressive sort of aesthetic for their indie show. July 18th. We will look for results on that. We typically do cover it on Lucha Central as on the website and on this podcast. And then Martinez Entertainment out of Texas is also doing a show July 17th, and that'll be in Fort Worth, Texas this time. They're swinging big. The poster has Flamita, Laredo Kid, Danny Limelight, Rey Horus, and Ultimo Guerrero, which again, when we get into, we've talked about the politics of things, that's an interesting addition. Like, on a standalone basis, Ultimo Guerrero, totally worthy to be on this card. Super exciting prospect. But he's not just a CMLL guy. He's one of the big name, high, top end of the card CMLL guys. And typically CMLL does not like anybody that's under their auspices working a show with anybody from AAA. And you may have noticed I mentioned Laredo Kid, who, so he's not officially AAA, I guess. So maybe that's how they're going to get around it. And they seem to sometimes be less bothered by these Texas shows in particular because they're on the wrong side of the border and I don't. So it's announced. There's a big, beautiful poster for it. Martinez Entertainment has a beautiful Facebook page. Go ahead and give them a follow. They have a YouTube channel with lots of cool matches. They've got, if you like Fuego del Sol, like Dusty does, they've got lots of Fuego del Sol matches on Martinez Entertainment. Yeah, just generally, so July 17th, they're bringing back that show. I will be keeping my eye on this because the words card subject to change seems very likely here. And then I had another interesting bit of news. I put this in a weird spot on the format. I should have done this behind the scenes. I try and group my good news and bad news in different order. Robles Promotion. We've talked about them before. They've been working both sides of the border with Alberto Del Rio or Alberto El Patron, however you think of him. They did a show in Guatemala with Psycho Clown against a local luchador that goes by the name of Voltron. I don't know. Maybe he is Five Lions. That'd be cool. But it was not. I don't have a lot of results for the show. The big news coming out of this was that the former Sexy Star, Sexy Dulce, was supposed to be on the show and instead had to go to the hospital with emergency appendicitis surgery. So she's still in Guatemala. She was taken off the card. We've talked about her a few times on the show. I'm not a huge fan of her as a performer, but I don't want anyone to be sick in a foreign country in particular for a long time. So I do wish her well. And I thought that was just an interesting story. So that's my road back to shows. I'm going to quickly jump over to the indie roundup. We actually had a bunch of IWRG matches that have happened between our last recording and this one. So this is another area where I'd love more fan feedback. Do you want me to cover all the IWRG? Do you want the big name matches? What do you want out of this? Cause I could probably at this point do an entire indie roundup segment just on the IWRG. And I don't know that that's necessarily what anybody wants. So, let me know. But we did have I'm going to go with the 627 show from Marina Nalcapan. I'm going to give you the last three matches here. This was, Cronices del Ring, which you can find footage of on Mas Lucha. Also, by the way, all of the results for all of the IWRG matches I just alluded to are up on Lucha Central. I did check that. They did give results to all of these things. So you can, if you want IWRG and you don't want to hear me talking about it, you can always check out Lucha Central's news and information page. Pep and some of the other writers do a very good job of keeping up on that. So the first match I'm going to talk about, we had Black Terry, Dr. Cerebro, and Aragon in a match against Gallego, Rocky Santana, and Romono Garcia. And this ended in a DQ after things got a little bit crazy. So the Black Terry, Dr. Cerebro, and Aragon technically won, but does anybody really win when people are getting hit with cookie sheets and masks are getting torn off and all that sort of thing, other than the fans? I should point out the fans always win with that level of violence. And then we had, this is the one that I wanted to catch because it's just got some great wrestlers in it. Arrow Boy and Baby Extreme against Hijo del Vikingo and Octagon Jr. So those of you who follow the show regularly will know we've talked about most of these guys. Baby Extreme is one that when Jerry was on the show, he talked about as a hot young up and comer out of the northern area. He's been on a lot of matches for Chaos and Lucha Time. And he's big. I shouldn't say big. He's a tiny high flyer. He's very, very tiny. And then Hijo del Vikingo and Octagon Jr. are obviously huge high flyers, and you've got a person with arrow in his name. So as you can imagine, bodies were flying all around the ring. Fans were probably thinking it was bring home a luchador night with the amount of luchadors they found in their seats. But Arrow Boy and Baby Extreme came out on top on this one. And in our main event, we had Hijo del Abrije against Abismo Negro Jr. And I didn't really get a lot of highlights or results on this, but Hijo de Brije one came out on top on that one. So that's, like I say, that's our big IWRG. That was the big news that was coming out. We got some big names out of that. We got to talk about super cool high flyers. That footage is available on the internet somewhere. And that's my indie roundup for you.
Great, Brendan. Thank you so much for both the road back to shows and the indie roundup. As Brendan mentioned, let us know your thoughts on our format. Always, we highly recommend and are open to suggestions. And so, great feedback or great insight too as to, what do the fans want to hear on the indie roundup. But a lot of news, especially the fact that we haven't heard anything from Federation Wrestling and kind of some of the logistical theories out there that have been alluded to in many of the messages and comments that have been put out by both the promotion and the wrestlers involved in the show. So always a great way to start the show, sets the tone, gives you the news you need to know. But next, we're going to kick it to Denise Salcedo, who's going to bring us this week's Lucha Central.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Math, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's Wrestle Boss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Masked Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
As always, a big thank you to Denise Salcedo, giving us this week's Lucha Central, letting you know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network. Up next, a big week in AAA, announcements galore about TripleMania. So, Dusty, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, so much going on. Well, first, AAA had a press conference and they announced the full lineup to TripleMania 29 being held August 14th. And the lineup is, first there will be a Marvel Lucha Libre match. No names announced yet, but new names are very likely to debut, probably at Verano de Escándalo. We'll see somebody new. Be interesting. Next will be a Copa Bardal, which is just a regular Copa TripleMania with Bardal as the sponsor. And in that match, announced so far are Drago, Mamba, and friend of the show, Mr. Iguana, with more names to follow. Next up, we have Lucha Brothers, Penta and Phoenix, and their second TripleMania match with no build-up versus El Vikingo and Laredo Kid versus Taurus and Luchador Sorpresa for the AAA Tag Team Championship. Taurus's partner was hinted at as being an ex-CMLL wrestler, an ex-tag team champ, and someone who has worked in Ring of Honor. So it'll be interesting to see who that is as well. Next up, we have Pagano, Chessman, and Murder Clown versus Puma King and two Luchador Surprise entrants. But if you've been following Sam Adonis on social media, you'll know he's been pretty firm about a La Empresa appearance, and so this would be the most likely place for them to appear with Puma King, because La Empresa, and so it just makes sense. Next up is Impact Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo versus AAA Reina de Reinas champions Fabi Apache for all the gold, winner takes all. Next is Andrade versus Kenny Omega for the AAA Mega Campeon Championship. And finally, the main event, Psycho Clown versus Rey Escorpion, and a mask versus hair Apuestas match. So this is a really exciting and really packed card. There's going to be a lot going on. You can find it online when the time comes. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, great show. And also, this Saturday, July 3rd, we have Verano de Escándalo. The following matches have been announced. Lady Shani versus Deonna Purrazzo in a non-title match. An Alas de Oro match, which means Golden Wings. It's a high flyer tournament. It's only been done a handful of times. The last time was in 2015 with Drago winning. So that'll be pretty exciting. Something that's unusual. We don't often see. No names have currently been announced, but keep an eye on that one. And then what is sure to be the match of the night, we have a three-way mixed tag titles match featuring Abismo Negro Jr. and Flamer versus Aris and Cheek Tormenta versus La Hydra and Mr. Iguana. And I can confirm that Yeska will be there.
Oh,
so that gives
there
him
any
distinct
doubt?
Advantage.
Yeah.
Right.
So, it's always good just to get the Yeska exclusive here.
Yes, yeah. I went straight to the source, and Yeska confirmed she would be there.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then also what we had this week was we had some news break, actually the day of recording, about the AAA FMV lawsuit. According to Lucha Libre FMV's lawyers, AAA and Lucha Libre FMV last discussed the settlement back in March. They claimed AAA's lawyer said he'd come back with a new settlement offer, but then just stopped responding. And they accused AAA of trying to run out the clock to get away with no settlement. So we'll see what happens. They're expecting it could take a further 6 to 12 months to serve AAA. So the lawsuit could actually be drawn out for 2 years. So it could be 2023 before we can legitimately see AAA without geo-blocking the United States. This has a lot of implications for AAA and for their product. So
that's really not good for them.
No, and their ability to monetize their product.
Yeah. Yeah, they were, Lucha Underground was supposed to be their foothold into breaking into the United States. And that momentum has been lost, and that's, I'm sorry, I'm staggered by this notion. Yeah. Carry on.
Well, no, that's all the news. Yeah, they could settle tomorrow and it could end, but it seems very unlikely at this point.
Well, yeah, unless something drastic happens, then it just seems like it's going to keep on going, especially if it's gone on this long.
Yeah, they've already let it go on, so there's, no reason to believe that it's gonna end quickly now.
Yeah, and they've shown they're willing to wait out, if they can. I mean, they apparently attempted to wait out Lucha Libre FMV and hoped it would just go away. And so we'll see. I mean, it doesn't look good for their future in the immediate sense as far as getting to see it up here.
No, there will be plenty of deep sea pirates that will find ways to do it for us, but that, like you mentioned, that ruins their monetization, and so they may be very aggressive about that too.
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how this all plays out, especially into TripleMania season.
Oh, so disappointing.
Yeah. Especially that means we're not going to be able to watch, at least through the proper channels, anything with Verano de Escándalo.
So no live watch-alongs, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunate. But, it remains to be seen.
I have it on good authority that Pep is probably going to be at some of these shows. So we will have a Lucha Central presence, but it will not be, it will not be direct, and we may have to, sail the deep oceans in order to find AAA
I was going to say luchacentral.com will have the results of the show. So for anyone who does miss it, make sure you visit luchacentral.com for results for Verano de Escándalo. But, another big week and lots to talk about is AEW, with finally making the shift back to Wednesdays. But so they had Saturday and Wednesday Night Dynamite. A lot to talk about. So Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, usually we cover Dark and Dark Elevation, but for the sake of brevity this week, we are going to focus and the amount of content. There's just a ton of content in these 2 episodes of Dynamite. And on Saturday Dynamite, first up for us, we had Conan showing up against Tully and a mic challenge, and it was incredible. Tony was with Tully at the ring. They bring out Conan. And Tully says the last time he saw Conan, he was interfering during Double or Nothing, but due to Conan's legendary status, he's going to let Conan go first anyway. And if you've ever seen Conan, you don't give him the microphone first, because he's going to decimate you.
Murder it.
And that Conan, it was amazing. He said that Tully liked to play mind games, but he and Proud and Powerful will not be intimidated because they're built differently. And he says that FTR claimed they had the same tough upbringing despite growing up in North Carolina, but they don't suffer from any realness. So he dropped some very real facts on prison rates and life in New York City. He also insulted Tully, saying he better learn some Spanish if he wants to talk to his grandkids, referring to the marriage between Daga and Tessa Blanchard.
Yes.
It was cold-blooded.
I loved it. It was so good, and it was so effortless, and it just, yes.
It's so real. Yeah, it's just
real. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just got hyped up. Great promo.
So for people who were unaware of that, they also could just be reading that as, more people are speaking Spanish in America anyway. So, I mean, it could have, either way.
It could have, but
we know. I'm just saying.
I think that's the thing too. AEW they do have those digs. That's a very common thing in a lot of their promos, is the fact that they always kind of give a wink to the fans, those smart fans who know. And that's been something that AEW in particular is kind of proud of, that they do kind of cater to that fan base that knows. But I think it's also the blend of what Dusty said, of realism on, however FTR grew up is completely different than New York, is completely different than, the challenges that a lot of people of color face, that, Proud and Powerful did face. So whatever kind of almost seemingly like first world problems, that's kind of the tone that I felt like Conan was addressing. Tully Blanchard is like, this is first world problems. I'm talking about real world problems in the real world. And I mean, I kind of think it's a fascinating dig too, almost like, your kids are going to be speaking Spanish. Your grandkids are like, you better learn a thing or two.
That's why I found it a fascinating double dig that way, because,
yes. Yes.
It's sure it's a smart fan thing, but also it's talking about the very real reality that all of America is kind of facing right now. So yeah.
Yeah. And then Tully, he's actually from San Antonio. So Tully says not only does he know Spanish, he knows Conan because he studied him, he's done his research, but Conan doesn't know him. And Tully says he can get his guys out here in a second, and Conan will be known for only making a one-time appearance on Dynamite.
I love that.
Yeah, so good.
And then Tully came for it.
He did.
In too. Like
they
Tully
went toe to toe.
Yeah, very passive, and I think really overall is helping elevate this Proud and Powerful FTR feud. I'm with this.
So excited to see that this is how they were really jump starting this feud, because
it's so good and like so perfect, and like we say, Tully really brought it. Then Conan, he said that Tully, he should know that Walmart is still hiring greeters. and he had his boys here too. Proud and Powerful come out. Tully directs Conan to look up at the big screen, and we see Santana and Ortiz are completely wrecked in the back. The masked men wearing the Inner Circle shirts that we were led to believe were Santana and Ortiz were actually FTR, and they laid Conan out. Tully he just loses his damn mind while it's going on. Like, he is so sadistically happy while it's going on. The crowd's chanting, "You suck." It was an incredible segment. Conan had one of the best promos in years. Like, he is a master of the craft. And you hear so much about what Dusty Rhodes did for NXT. And I really hope that AEW is smart enough to get Conan to help do something like that for AEW. Like, he is so good at what he does. I mean, as good as he ever was.
And he's truly an advocate of people working together, of trying to build bridges, of trying to expand wrestling beyond just, the certain corners of the world, which is something that, of course, AEW has touted as being this forbidden door. Mm-hmm. But I think that also Conan lives it. And, having that kind of expertise available to them is something they really should capitalize on.
So for those who are less aware of what Miranda's alluding to, because it was a long time ago and some people may not have lived through it and done the research, Conan was a big part of the luchador movement on both sides of the border. He brought American wrestlers to AAA, and then he brought AAA wrestlers up to America for a lot of, he used his position as one of the most popular wrestlers to facilitate this. So to what Miranda is saying, it's a lifetime choice for him. He's always been about, let's expand people's horizons. Let's bring more wrestling to wrestling, or, more flavors of wrestling to wrestling. So yeah.
Yeah, it was just exciting. And like we say, Conan's genius at wrestling, and his influence and his, direction and everything for Proud and Powerful make me so much more excited for this feud than I could have ever been without him involved. Like, I would have been excited, but I am so hyped for this now. Like, they set it up perfectly, and very exciting. Then go ahead.
Let's be honest. They needed to do something to make it look like there was a big turning of the corner, because whether they meant to bury Proud and Powerful or not, they've been either on the losing end or on the comedy end for the better part of a year at this point. They never did anything when they were in the top 5 tag teams in the world. They never really got a full-fledged shot.
Yeah.
So people needed to believe that this is a new direction and a new step for Proud and Powerful, and Conan is the perfect ingredient for that.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and they're setting it up perfectly. So I'm really excited to see this play out, and hopefully we'll see some more appearances from Conan. He's showed up a few times now, and it's becoming more frequent. So hopefully that's pointing to a positive trend there as well. After that, we had Eddie and Penta with a video. Eddie asked if the Young Bucks were serious. Matt and Nick, they take people out in wrestling. but he does that in real life. And he says he's learned that no matter how much he beats them up, it doesn't matter. And so the only way he can hurt the Bucks is to hurt their ego and take their tag titles. Penta cuts a promo. Yeah, so good. Penta cut a promo in Spanish, and Alex Abrahantes was there, and he said, Penta says, you talk about running people over, but next week we run over you.
Oh.
Yeah, very good. Very exciting. We'll get to their match, but yeah, fantastic. Then we had Kenny Omega versus Jungle Boy. This was an excellent match. You could immediately tell that Jungle Boy had really done his homework. He had a counter or an escape for pretty much everything that Kenny Omega tried to throw at him. It started off with a slow pace and built like a crescendo, with the pace really picking up at the end, and you could tell that Kenny Omega was taking Jungle Boy far more seriously towards the end. Jungle Boy took 5 separate V-triggers. It was crazy. Jungle Boy got a lot in too in this incredible match. He showed that he could really hang with the best at the main event level, and this really was a big-time TV main event. It felt big, even if there was no real doubt about who was going to win the matchup. Like, we kind of knew. And after the match, Kenny Omega was going to go for his usual belt shot on Jungle Boy, but Christian ran out to make the save, and immediately the Hardy family office, including TH2, is ringside to jump Christian. But the twist of fate was countered into a kill switch attempt because the Young Bucks ran in for a double super kick, but then Christian takes the twist of fate to end the show. And that brings us to Wednesday Dynamite and Eddie Kingston and Penta El Cerro Miedo versus the Young Bucks. And the theme of this match, or the stipulation, was that if Kingston and Penta won, they get a shot next week at the tag title. Penta was back in his Joker gear. It was amazing. The Young Bucks were apparently cosplaying as the gas station guy from Ghost World. It was an interesting look, but it was theirs. And it took a lot, but Kingston and Penta finally got a win over the Bucks this week, with Penta getting the pin on Matt Jackson after a Fear Factor, followed by Kingston's spinning back fist at the 13-minute and 50-second mark.
Beautiful double team move.
Oh,
beautiful.
Fantastic. I love the interaction between Eddie Kingston and Penta, like, so good.
Yeah, they had a couple legit tag team moves in this that I really loved.
Mm-hmm.
They worked together so well. There was some spots with Rick Knox. He seemed very friendly to the Bucks, if not directly on their side. He counted a 3 count, then called it a 2, so they weren't counted out. There was kind of a ref bump to get out of a pin attempt. It was interesting. I think Brendan has some opinions on this.
I do, because I've heard a lot of people say things like this. They're like trying to say that Rick Knox but I was watching what he was doing. From the perspective of someone who watches a lot of ref matches. I've talked about that on the show before. So one of the things that we're taught to do as a ref is you just count the 3, and it's the wrestler's job to get the shoulder up. So you count that 3, and you'll notice if you go back and you watch it, Knox counted 3, but as soon as he slapped 3, he looked right at the timekeeper and held up 2 fingers. Like, he didn't even hesitate to see if the guys got their shoulder up or anything, which they didn't, which is why everyone was freaking out. Yeah. But it was totally, he was just doing his job the way he's supposed to be doing his job. Similar thing, it looks worse because of the way AEW reps are treated at this point, where they either get to be Aubrey levels of on point and will be able to get in Chris Jericho's face and tell him he needs to go back to the corner and use the tag ropes, or they're like Knox was in this one, where he's distracted by anything and everything. And like later, I'm gonna give away something from the main event, Dusty. So, but later there's a spot that just really drove me crazy, where a wrestler had another wrestler outside the ring. Neither of those wrestlers were involved in the match, but the referee, for some reason, was so fascinated in watching those 2 wrestlers and what they were doing that he missed all of the shenanigans going on in the ring. And that is the kind of ref stupidity that AEW seems to be encouraging on the flip side of it, where the ref is now so dumb that two wrestlers that are not in the match are more distracting and more important than all of the shenanigans going on right behind him that you can hear. Like, I mean, they're less than 5 feet away. There's no way you can't hear chairs or whatever else was going on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's unfortunately that makes Rick Knox look like he's a crooked ref. So I hope that they lean into that now that the internet is going all over this. I hope they just make Rick Knox have some appearances on BTE and he becomes a personality. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm going to give people some history here. Rick Knox was the senior official on Lucha Underground. He is all about, he's an experienced, super good ref. I've seen him do matches where he's handled inside ring action, outside ring action, took a ref bump, and then was still able to be in all the right places he needed to do, including handling a possible injury. So, like, I know he's not incompetent like people are calling him, but that's all the more reason they should lean into this. I want to see him on BTE now. I want to see him just be a regular character on BTE. Like, just have him in the background playing cards or something. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to chime in with another layer to this, because earlier this week, Tony Khan was on Busted Open Radio on Sirius XM. During that day, Bully Ray was one of the co-hosts of the show, and he directly asked Tony Khan about AEW's referee situation, specifically, if he really had any thoughts or intentions to fix it. And Tony Khan kind of circumvented his concern and jumped into, instead of kind of addressing Bully Ray's question, jumped into ref bumps. And these are quotes directly from Tony Khan. He says, I don't do ref bumps generally as a rule, and you can count on your hand how many there have been in AEW in 2 years, less than 5. And so since I don't do a lot of ref bumps when they're double teams and when things turn into like lucha matches a little bit, which I do a lot of trios matches and tags with luchadors, so there is going to be lucha aspects of this stuff. It's going to happen because I'm not going to just knock the referee over out of nowhere so that I can do some fun lucha spots. So I don't really see it as a problem. I know I haven't noticed that or thought it wasn't an issue. So to me, that quote was interesting because then he was kind of bringing lucha libre style as kind of not an excuse, but a explanation as to why the referee style, in matches maybe was, I guess, chaotic or not organized or not seemingly organized. I just found that to be very interesting that he kind of threw that out there as a reason behind why maybe there's the perception of referees not being able to maintain control in the ring.
So there is a perception of luchador refs in the wrestling community as being not as good as so Red Shoes over in Japan is generally accepted to be one of the best refs around. Like, you can watch him and know he's going to run a clean, honest match the whole time. That kind of thing. Yeah. But Mexico has Tirantes, right?
And I think that also gives its own explanation, because that lucha libre officiating is its own world.
Yeah, it's true.
But the reason that Tirantes works is because there are rules, and the fans know there are rules, so they get upset with him when he's breaking the unspoken rules of being a ref. And so that again goes back to make Rick Knox a heel ref, if that's what you need to do. Because if your excuses were doing lucha rules, then go for the completely corrupt ref. Like, it's a thing that you can do with lucha rules, and it works great. But it only works when you have refs that are not that, so that the fans can feel justified being upset.
It's just like, I understand we live in a world now in professional wrestling where the lines are blurred. There isn't pure, say, baby faces or heels anymore. Sometimes there's, heroes and villains, good guys and bad guys, and sometimes those blend the line. But I think that the point behind it is that it doesn't seem like there's clarity in the directions of the refereeing as to what Brendan's alluding to. Either you have a scenario like Aubrey, who is very down the middle and serious, and in some ways it's almost like that they had to do that because of the fact that Aubrey is, now there's a lot more women in referee roles, but when she came on board, she was really the first to do it. And in order for her to be taken seriously and for fans to kind of respect her role, it was the fact that she called things down the middle, and if it's only helped her reputation, and if anything, she's become one of the best in the game. But that's because I think that was also very intentional, is that there is no shenanigans, there's no playing around. But with everyone else, it feels like, it just doesn't seem like that is the case for every other referee. And so with not having that level of clarity or consistency, then it does make the rest, even the whole team, kind of look silly. And it can also make the company look like they don't have a level of seriousness to the refs. And it's already hard for that to happen too, because they are very known for having spot fest matches. And it is, all about these spots and getting them in, and less about the actual psychology and even a common sense format of the matches and the rules.
So, as much as I love Aubrey, I do want to point out that she wasn't the first. Jessica Carr in NXT was the first referee.
Yeah, no. And I mean, just more, but I think that Aubrey, in all honesty, has overshadowed,
in a lot of ways.
Jessica Carr, yeah. I feel like, and that's true, Jessica Carr was, and it was a big deal, but I feel like Aubrey has overshadowed Jessica.
She's done more mainstream high profile matches, but I do want to make sure that we, because Aubrey will let me know later that it was Jessica first.
Yeah. And I only mean that in a way where it's that I think not overshadowed, but just that now Aubrey's is a lot more well known. And then you're right. I think it's because she's been in more high profile matches, that I think that she's just a much more well known referee. But I also feel like I think AEW was a little bit ahead of the game in having Aubrey in more high profile matches earlier on.
I don't disagree on that. But so some of this is the referee's own styles. Aubrey has always been a firm, even when she worked in the indies out here, it's been firm about the rules. The reason that all of the Pacific Northwest rings have tag ropes on them now is because Aubrey made tag ropes and brought them to every show that she refereed at.
And that's one of the biggest feedback on AEW with tags. So I think it's also very confusing where you do have.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry.
That
story blows my mind as far as her. She's the one who now, I think that's a saint in the making, but then it's also but yet AEW does it, rarely acknowledges tag ropes.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going though. And then you have other refs that are more permissive, like Rick Knox has many stories about fun matches that he's done, and because he will let things get loose and go into spot fest like people will complain about. So the meeting often is somewhere in between, and I think I can't speak for where Aubrey's at on this because I've seen her be more permissive about not use of tag ropes, and has even gone on the record at some point and said you can make a tag anywhere above the waist. But some of this is the styles. The reason she's got more of a reputation of being a Law and Order style ref is because that's what she's always brought to the table. Whereas Rick Knox in particular has, at least for the last 5 to 10 years, been a lot more permissive and letting the more indie flow of things happen. So we talked about this off air. This is where AEW really needs to have some consistency. They need to, TK or Jericho or somebody just needs to say, these are the actual rules that we need to have so that our refs can look consistent and we're not burying our refs. Because the other terrible thing about Rick Knox looking like he is a bad guy ref on this is that he took the heel heat off of the Bucks. when he did that. Everybody was mad at him and not the Bucks, and they're supposed to be the super cheaty faces that nobody wants to see win, like we saw later in that match when more and more nonsense was happening. So, by having referee mistakes like that, you're muddying the story even more. Like they're trying to, I mean, Miranda said that we don't necessarily have heels and faces all the time, but the Bucks are really claiming that heel space right now. They are cheating to win all the time. They're coming out with these ugly porn star mustaches so that nobody will like them. I mean, they are trying to be as hateable.
They're trying to look as ugly on the outside as ugly as they are on the inside.
Yeah, it's true. And the Bucks were really beginning to suffer from Superman syndrome, where they never lost no matter what. And to me, it made them feel less and less credible every week because, it just feels unlikely, not credible. And they needed a loss to make them a little more vulnerable, to make their matches feel a little more dramatic. And this was the first Young Bucks loss in tag team matches since October 21st of last year, when they lost in the Fatal 4-Way Eliminator match against FTR, Best Friends, and the Natural Nightmares. But as a normal tag team match, their last loss was AEW's 2020 Revolution against Hangman Page and Kenny Omega.
Did they even take the fall in that multi-team match?
No.
Yeah. So, yeah. That barely counts.
It, so I did, but it just barely counts. Yeah. We had Jungle Boy defeating Jack Evans. It was a great match. Post-match, the Hardy family comes out to make trouble. Christian and the rest of the Jurassic Express come out for the brawl. Team Taz came out, or had a spot. Taz talked about how Team Taz was not at full strength, but sometimes family has to fight to clear things up. That's why on July 14th at Fyter Fest, Brian Cage is defending the FTW title against a medically cleared Ricky Starks. We also have what it looks like next week at Road Rager will be the debut of Andrade against Matt Sydal. It feels kind of shoehorned in. It probably is. It looks like they're pushing the coffin match to one of the Fyter Fest shows so that they don't do it in Miami after the, recent news. Then the last week, they don't want to tie it to that. So that's probably why that changed. And then in the main event, we had Sammy Guevara versus MJF. This was an amazing match, one of the best AEW's ever put on. There was outstanding athleticism and in-ring storytelling. Towards the end, it got mired down with a lot of interference. Wardlow was there, Shawn Spears was there. A lot was going on. Too many people involved. They felt like it was strange to waste two strong finishers from Sammy. They kind of spoiled it a little bit by announcing MJF was going to face Jericho next week. Like, the whole thing was...
They spoiled a really good finisher from MJF, too. Like, that pile driver off of the top rope should have been a finish.
Yeah.
But,
that was incredible.
Yeah.
I agree.
Oh. And to the point that you just made, I have to watch this match again. I was so emotionally drained by the fact that I knew there was no chance Sammy was winning, that I was not invested in watching this match. Like, I just was kind of waiting to see the performative nature of it, because I already knew Sammy wasn't going to win. And then when he hit a finisher early, I'm like, well, now they're just making it so that everybody, even in the back row, knows Sammy's not going to win. So,
yeah, it's just a foregone conclusion. It's obvious that they're building up MJF to face Chris Jericho, too. I mean, even without the announcement, it was kind of obvious that's where it was going. But as soon as they announced he was going to have a showdown, I guess, with Chris Jericho next week. But Sammy and go ahead.
Oh, this is just fantasy booking. They could have done it in a more WCW-like way, and I don't necessarily mean like super Monday Night Wars era WCW, where they could have had the match and then had him do that promo and say, okay, now I'm gonna move on to looking at you, Chris Jericho, and then announce that he's going to announce his stipulations and all of that. More people would have been excited by this prospect, because now they're thinking Chris Jericho might be the one that finally shuts MJF up. Instead, they just shut everything down with Sammy, and then they've made it kind of a foregone conclusion that we're going to see MJF and Jericho for at least one more match, but probably 3. And yeah. And you had more dumb refs in this. This is the match that I was talking about, where the ref did stupid things, just completely. Why are you holding Chris Jericho over there? Why? What was that? A chair? Oh, I guess it count a 3 count. All right, sorry, I derailed you, and we're probably way over time.
Yeah, that's all I had to say. I mean, it's interesting to see these guys. We know that are the future of the company, but they didn't give them that strong finish to.
I
don't know. I loved every bit of it except for the ending.
I say that a lot about AEW matches.
Yeah, it's a common theme.
All right. Well, again, the results for AEW are available on luchacentral.com, Dark, Dynamite, and I believe Elevation. Now that I think about it, yes, they're all available on luchacentral.com. We're going to jump. Go ahead.
Oh, just real quick. Those are all very watchable for Lucha content. We skipped a lot because there was so much going on the Dynamites, but if you are wanting to see good Lucha content, Dark and Dark Elevation this week had lots of good content for you.
Especially Elevation, so good. So good.
We're going to jump over to NXT as we are on the go-home show to Great American Bash next week. This episode started off with an amazing triple threat tag team match to determine the number 1 contenders for the NXT Women's Championship. Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon versus Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai versus Zoe Stark and Io Shirai. And this match was just madness from the get-go. Started off with an all-out brawl, but then ended up back in the ring. And this was a proper triple threat, so 1 representative from each team was in the ring at all times, which led to a lot of interesting spots. One of my favorite parts was all of the action happening outside, all the dives, the moonsaults, the dives in between the ropes, everything that happened outside of the ring, just in succession. There was also an amazing sequence towards the ends of everyone hitting these finishers and these, powerful moves. Yeah. I just loved the pace of this match. I really enjoyed it. I know for some people it could be very spotty, but for women's matches, this isn't something that you get. And to have a triple threat tag team match being the format for this and how well I think it was still really executed, made this such an amazing way to start off the show. Towards the end, there was an interesting sequence of Raquel Gonzalez saving Dakota Kai by taking a moonsault by Io Shirai. And that took Raquel out. Dakota Kai tried to get in her move with the knee, but Io Shirai kicked out and got another moonsault on Dakota Kai for the win. So Zoe Stark and Io Shirai are the new number 1 contenders. They will face The Way next week at the Great American Bash. And this continues to kind of allude to maybe some storyline that may happen with Raquel and Dakota Kai later in the future. That seems like that is, the next program that's already set, especially with Dakota Kai being the one who's pinned. But it also leaves an interesting format of Zoe Stark and Io Shirai as, 2 competitors who are formidable in the ring, but have a very shaky partnership, even though in ring they had really good chemistry. And they haven't been teaming that long, so who knows how that's going to impact their go around at the Great American Bash. But individually, 2 incredibly talented women together could be a force to be reckoned with. So, to me, this was actually my favorite match of the night. I loved the way that they started this show with it. I highly recommend watching this match.
Yeah.
We also had through the show, some run-ins between Johnny Gargano and Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross showed up to the arena. It started off where Karrion Kross showed up to the arena at first. Johnny Gargano attacked him. That just pissed off Karrion Kross. Later on, he went into the ring, to call out Johnny Gargano. Johnny came out, but Karrion Kross was attacked from behind by Austin Theory with a mean forearm to the back of the head. Great air on that. But that only, again, pissed Karrion Kross off. Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory were in the ring 2-on-1, but Karrion was able to take advantage, or to get the upper hand. Towards the end, he was going to look like smash Johnny Gargano into the steel steps. However, the security got involved. Samoa Joe got involved. However, during that, segment as well, Johnny Gargano got a pretty mean super kick in. And so really, that just irritated Karrion Kross. He, approached or really confronted Samoa Joe about it. Later on, as Johnny and Austin Theory were leaving, Karrion Kross was able to get him outside in the parking lot, but Samoa Joe made the save. So this new role of Samoa Joe as this enforcer really seems to be playing well. It also seems like, Johnny Gargano, what are you doing? What are you trying to, you're going to die. Like, you just don't do it. I do commend that they're putting Karrion Kross in better clothing. I really appreciated his outfit this week. I'm tired of the vests. So, he is your champion. Make sure he dresses like one. But it looks like we are leading to a Karrion Kross Johnny Gargano match somewhere down the line, a 1-on-1. And Johnny Gargano, though, is very smart. He knows how to get under the skin of Karrion Kross, and that's exactly how he'll be able to get a title match from him, is to get so deep under his skin that Karrion will just want to be in the ring with him. We also had Tian Shan, Xia Li, and Boa versus Mercedes Martinez and Jake Atlas. Some great teamwork between Jake Atlas and Mercedes Martinez, but the big news coming out of this match was that Mercedes Martinez got pretty much knocked out by a kick to the head by Xia Li. This match was stopped by the referee, and there had been reports that Mercedes Martinez had gone to a local medical facility afterwards. Don't know how much of that is story, how much of that is true. You could see in the match that she got rocked pretty hard in the head. It's
standard concussion protocol to go get checked out. So she definitely went to the hospital. Other than that, I can't tell. I don't know.
Yeah. We don't know. So hopefully Mercedes Martinez is okay. This looks like this feud is far from over. I did like to have that mixed tag match in NXT. We don't have that very often. And especially against Jake Atlas, which again, they had some great double team on Boa in that match. So I kind of like where this is going. And Mercedes is going to need some backup with Tian Sha, because you have the mysticism, and you also have Xia Li just kicking the crap out of everybody. But the big news coming out of this week's NXT is the main event, which was the North American Championship match, Bronson Reed versus Isaiah Swerve Scott. This actually came about unexpectedly, where Hit Row put out a message, especially Isaiah Scott put out the message to Bronson Reed that he wanted an opportunity at the North American Championship. Bronson Reed accepted. And, this one for the most part went as expected as far as really the big size advantage of Bronson Reed. Isaiah Swerve Scott had a few moments where he kind of had an interesting thought process as to how he was going to handle Bronson Reed, especially where he was going to try and power bomb him. Also did kind of an interesting suplex attempt with utilizing the ropes. Now, Hit Row did end up becoming a factor, but not a huge one. Towards the end of the match, Ashanti Adonis and Top Dollar did kind of interfere, but Bronson Reed threw all of them over the barricade. But that was enough of a distraction for Isaiah Swerve Scott to get the advantage on the ropes. And then he hit his drop kick, the house call, followed by a 450 splash to win and become the new North American champion, which is kind of surprising. One, Bronson Reed hadn't won the championship that long ago. Two, he just defended it in a winner takes all. Granted, there was a lot more to it as far as, having the tag team champions in MSK keep their titles as well. But there's also speculation that this could have been an impact or an effect of Bronson Reed's dark match on main event, and that he may be called up to Raw or SmackDown sooner rather than later. To me, what I hope this does lead to, which is something they kind of alluded to, was maybe Legado del Fantasma starts to jump in. And now with a new champion, Santos Escobar kind of tries to stake his claim as a contender for this championship. And we do have a little bit of faction warfare between Legado and Hit Row. So it was, I think, a surprise for a lot of people. But I think that this is also a great opportunity and spot for Isaiah Swerve Scott. Hit Row seems to be going really well as a faction, even though they're not very liked. It seems to be getting a great crowd reaction.
Mm-hmm. I want to see way more of Hit Row versus Legado del Fantasma. Yes. I think that's just magic waiting to happen. Yes. I did say when we were talking about Bronson Reed's championship, it felt to me like this was kind of an interim thing. So it's not totally shocking that they put it on someone else. But I also agree that there's a very strong possibility, because he's the kind of person that Vince McMahon would like, that he's going to be moving up very soon.
Yeah.
It's totally agreed. Other big news that came out of NXT this week is that they are bringing back the Breakout Tournament. The last time we saw the tournament was in 2019, and it is coming back. We even saw some clips. I did see, as far as some flashes of some talent, Raul Mendoza and Joaquin Wilde, which I think would be great if they had individual matches in the Breakout Tournament. So there could be a lot where maybe while Santos is chasing the North American title, you have Joaquin and Raul in the Breakout Tournament, and so they can still be busy doing their own things, but also still busy doing their own things, especially because Raul and Joaquin are pretty much out of the NXT tag team title contendership now. So we will see what happens in the Breakout Tournament. I'm sure we're going to have more match announcements coming along the way. And next week is the Great American Bash. So, again, right now we do have announced that, Io Shirai and Zoe Stark will be facing the way for the NXT women's tag team titles. Maybe Isaiah Swerve Scott will have his first title defense of the North American Championship.
It.
And I'm sure we'll see maybe, Karrion Kross versus Johnny Gargano, for the NXT championship. So lots going on. NXT is still an amazing product. And again, I just highly recommend the opening match. Is one of my favorite women's matches of the year so far. So, just watch it.
It really shows the depth of the women's division. So
we say it, and I mainly say, but I think a lot of people echo it. The best women's division in all of wrestling is the NXT women's division.
Every time you bring that up, I always say it's just one of the best divisions, period. When I talk about the best wrestling I watched this week, NXT women's division is always in the picture. So,
and there's a lot more from where that's coming from. Even last week when we talked about Casey Canzaro and Kaden Carter, they're still moving their way back up, but you give them the rest of the year. I absolutely believe those two women are going to be in contendership, if not have the NXT tag team title somewhere along the line. And so they've really built and are working on building such a robust women's division. And now you have not only just the NXT Women's Championship, but also the Women's Tag Team Championships as well. So there's a lot more story happening. And even the story between Mercedes Martinez and Xia Li. That's actually grown and escalated into a much proper in-depth story, and it will be very interesting to see. Hopefully, again, Mercedes Martinez is okay and she can continue on with this. But after we'll just call it disaster of Retribution, luckily she's able to go back to NXT and have a proper feud and do what she does best, kick ass. So, NXT is a place where people have been able to grow, have been able to come back. It's a magical place.
Yeah.
Magical place. So make sure you stay tuned next week for the Great American Bash. And, of course, results are available on luchacentral.com. Up next, though, Ring of Honor, including a big announcement on a World Championship match.
Oh, yeah. So this week, we got the finals of the Survival of the Fittest tournament. As I mentioned off air, I was a little surprised because I thought we had a week before it went on the air. So I was going to do a bigger build for it. But, yeah, the Survival of the Fittest, the 6 people that had advanced were now in an elimination style match. As we had mentioned before, there were 3 possible luchadors, 2 of which advanced, that being Bandito and the demonic Flamita. That's his name now. That's his branding. He's the demonic Flamita. And his entrance is pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So demonic Flamita was the first one to come out. I think it's because they really wanted to show off that entrance, but I'm not angry about that at all. And they got all 6 wrestlers in the ring. They went at it in an elimination style match. As we've mentioned before, Flamita and Bandito, who's the other luchador that came through, have a little bit of a feud going on right now. So they got into the ring together near the beginning of the match. It turned into a giant brawl that spilled out. They then explained that this is lucha rules, so because their feet hit the floor, 2 more wrestlers came into the ring. Those 2 disappeared for a while. But interestingly enough, Flamita was the first person eliminated in this. And then kind of the story that was building was, how is Bandito going to survive? Because he was taking a lot of big moves and getting hit a lot, knocked out a lot. And if it weren't for the lucha rules, he probably would have been in a lot more trouble. But every time that he got knocked pretty flat, he rolled out of the ring, so other people came in. But the end result was Bandito wound up winning the whole thing. So now the world title event that we are going to get to see is Bandito versus Rush, July 11th at Best in the World. So by virtue of winning Survival of the Fittest, the winner of Survival of the Fittest always was going to get a title shot, but now we get Bandito versus Rush, which is going to be magical. Like, I was probably going to get Survival of the Fittest anyway because ROH has been doing a solid product, but just based on this match announcement alone, I guaranteed that I'm going to get this match, to get this pay-per-view. There's a little bit of a giveaway in that they also have announced that Rush and Bandito are going to be facing each other at an event that happens past that. So that doesn't give away who's going to come out of this on the title, but it does sound like this is going to be a program for a while. So, I mean, I'm still not unhappy about this. It means that there's been a lot of talk lately about Bandito. It's time for Bandito to either step up or get out of the way, more or less. Like, they needed to either make him a main event guy or make somebody else have somebody else take the spot that he's filling. Cause he as far as being kind of mid-card after his faction got broken up, he needed to either step up to where he's at or, kind of, fall down into a weird feud with Bateman or something. Nothing against Bateman, but that's.
I was going to say nothing against Bateman. I think that'd be interesting, but.
Yeah.
But that seems to be his. For those who don't know, Bateman is an instructor, so he's not always going to be the big guy, and he's gonna. A lot of the time, he does feuds to help elevate other people. That's why I bring that up. He's a great guy and he's a fantastic wrestler. It'd be a fun feud, but that's not what is happening. We're getting Rush instead. So once again, July 11th, Best in the World, Rush and Bandito for the title. It's a free episode on ROH TV this week. So by the time this is going up, you'll have a day to watch it. But if you haven't watched it by the time you're hearing this is your reminder you should watch it. Or pay $9.99 for the ROH app and watch it.
Yeah.
Speaking of free on YouTube, they are still airing Women Division Wednesdays, and Alex Gracia is one of the most recent women to get a golden ticket to the women's tournament later this summer. And I think she's also featured on this week's Women's Division Wednesday match.
I think it was a tag match this week, but I do remember seeing her name. Full disclosure, things have been changing behind the scenes for me, so I haven't been able to keep up with my full watch list, and the women's wrestling Wednesday was one of the ones until Miranda just mentioned it had slipped through my. I know what I'm doing after we get up.
I know this is a trios effort. We all jump in as needed. But yeah, well, and again, just a reminder of free content available online on Ring of Honor Women's Division Wednesdays. Alex Gracia, Texas based, I believe. Lucha Libre background. I believe she's wrestled for CMLL. So also seen on AEW. We also always try and get lucha adjacent, lucha related content anywhere that we can find it and present it to listeners. So check out Alex Gracia on Women Division Wednesdays.
She reps the lucha when she comes to the ring. That is definitely part of her full persona. So I don't view her as adjacent. I view her as actual lucha. It's not.
Yeah.
Well, next we have This Week on Lucha Libre History. So Dusty, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, that's right. It's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for This Day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera. He's got information, birthdays, anniversaries, matches of the day, amazing videos, and even more. And it's all about Lucha Libre at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. This week we chose July the 3rd, 2016, when Pentagon Jr. won the Latin American Championship from Psycho Clown after a Pagano run-in. This was a big match with a lot of exciting moves, super hot crowd. They were all sure Psycho Clown was their favorite. There was a lot that went on early in the match, but it didn't really get to any storytelling or anything interesting until there was a ref bump. You might notice a theme this week. We've got a lot of ref bumps. And, yeah, I mean, the moves were interesting in themselves, but, it just didn't build to anything. We got the ref bump, to set up the big spot. But, if you do it so you don't get disqualified, shouldn't you get disqualified for hitting the ref with the chair?
With the chair? Yeah. Especially after yelling at the ref for not counting right, and then you hit him with the chair.
He was a slow counter. And I believe it was Pietro.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting. Piero, rather.
Pierre, there we go.
Yeah.
Pietro.
That's
an X-Men.
Yeah. I was like, gonna just go with it.
Yeah. And then Hijo del Torrantes came out for the final 3 count. So we did, one of the other crooked refs came out and did the legit finish. I'm sorry, Dusty. Did you have more on this, or
No. Yeah, I was leading into your theories there with the ref bumps. So.
So this, as Dusty mentioned, this was the this refs is the story this week. You had he's really in AAA. He's really one of the more legit, as close to Law and Order refs you get in AAA. They are very permissive in AAA. I mean, we joke about cookie sheets every week for a reason. He was calling it down the line. I didn't think it was a slow count. It should be pointed out, this was also kind of a Technico versus Technico match, because this is the Perros del Mal version of Pentagon. They were very excited to see him, and it's Psycho Clown, who I don't think has ever been hated by anybody other than me and Meatloaf. So that was weird, and that's why I found it especially weird that one of their over-the-top bad guy refs, who at the time was feuding with the women, was the hero that came in for the 3 count. But it's a fun match. It felt like it was almost 2 different matches, though, because, to your point, moves happened and things went back and forth, but it didn't really hit a pace of who's going to win this until after the referee got hit with the chair. And then they kind of went to an extra gear on it. And then I'm just going to throw out our get our bills paid here. I did notice that Pentagon came to the ring wearing a Masked Republic shirt, one that I actually purchased from them. So, If you watch this match and you like Pentagon's shirt, I'm sure you can find it in Mass Republic's store right now. So there you go. Happy birthday, Kevin.
Yeah.
Miranda, go ahead and give us your thoughts.
So, to me, I wanted to know a little bit about how they got to this point. So, in seeing kind of a little bit of the history that got to this match, I did see that Pentagon Jr. did win the 2016 Rey de Reyes tournament in defeating La Parca and Villano. And then from there, that was able to build him as a challenger to the Latin American Championship match. And so, the match itself, I thought, was really entertaining. The entrances and the build up at the beginning was really, really great. And this was, at a big height for both wrestlers. And so I really sensed that in the crowd and the way that they were both received. To me, kind of the action outside of the ring was more of the interesting part for me, because I was trying to get a sense of, this was Cero Miedo, and so how aggressive and kind of crazy, Pentagon could be. But I think, in that kind of face or technical side, Psycho Clown is the type who will fight right back and get as crazy. And so I just really loved the back and forth. I also just visually loved that half green, half white mask of Psycho Clown.
Yeah,
so
I
thought that was
the blue hair. Like,
it
really
visually
fantastic.
Really liked both of this, the attire that they had. But I mean, just to echo a lot, already you guys have mentioned a lot of what was interesting in the match for me. But in just the final notes, as far as just the crowd, the look, and the action outside of the ring, made this really entertaining to watch. And I get, those. So I think in Lucha Libre matches, you do have to kind of work a little bit harder to find the logic, but exactly in that ref bump, like Tirantes, even though he is a brutal ref, comes out, he does his job. He will always do a 3 count. It will be slow, like molasses, but he will do it. And that's been a very fascinating thing in learning about, rudo referees, and even just the different, like the fact that there are rudo referees in Lucha Libre. That was such a concept to me when I really first started watching, because in American wrestling, you don't see that outside of the very few. And it's looked at, but it's more done in a storyline, and that's it. Whereas in Lucha Libre, it is a very consistent thing, regardless of story. You just have, rudo and technical referees, and sometimes you have them in the same match. But at the end of the day, it's a very definitive line that they have, or definitive role that they serve, and they're still doing their job. So it is one of the things about Lucha Libre that's very unique, but also works well, has worked well. And I think will continue to work well. So yeah, going on the ref rant. That's my last piece.
You can rely on this show to go on Ref Rants.
Ref Rants. That's the new segment. Thanks everyone for your feedback on that.
This was a segment of Ref Rants.
Well, that was this week in Lucha Libre history. As Dusty mentioned, don't forget to check out luchacentral.com for this day and Lucha Libre history. But there is so much more at luchacentral.com than just that. Brendan, why don't you tell our listeners what else they can find?
Absolutely. So, if you're listening to this and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it really is time to do it. luchacentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area, and I'm going to stress this point right now because we're coming back to that. There's no better way to stay on top of this than going to a website like Lucha Central. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world, a place to have your voices heard from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives and all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And here we go. This is the nail. This is it. on top of all of this, it's free. luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Well, we still have WWE. It's still a thing. So, Dusty, why don't you... Sorry, I just...
No, that's...
I promise there are no Ref Rants in this.
Yeah.
No Ref Rants. That is very, very true.
Yeah.
We actually have some good things to talk about Raw, no less.
Yeah.
Which is not a typical thing. But yeah, Dusty, go ahead.
Yeah, we usually don't have much Raw content, but this week we had no SmackDown content. We had Raw content. A little unusual. First up, we had the Lucha House Party. Backstage, Nikki Cross has a new superhero gimmick with a mask, and they just congratulated her on it and told her that it was a real nice mask, and that was it. But Lindsay had an amazing new Tiger, Lindsay style mask that was inspired by 1998 Kane's mask. And so cool. Red with the black. Looks fantastic. They also had a match on Main Event this week. I have not had the time to watch it, but I wanted to mention they were on Main Event this week, so if anybody wants to watch it later will. I'll watch it. If it's great, we'll talk about it next week. But then our main match content for Raw this week, we had Ricochet versus John Morrison. And it sure wasn't Johnny Mundo versus Prince Puma. We saw that match in Lucha Underground. This was not that match.
That's not it.
Yeah, it was still pretty okay. It wasn't bad. It felt a little choreographed in that usual John Morrison way, like the WWE John Morrison choreographed feel. But the ending was the real interesting part. Morrison is sitting on the barricade on the far side of the camera, and Ricochet hit an amazing flying crossbody from the top rope that caused what might ordinarily be a unique double countout. But we also saw a double count out between Ricochet and Humberto a few weeks ago. So this seems to be their go-to finish lately for Ricochet. I'm not sure why, but he's always catching the count out instead of getting the pin. It's a little unusual.
Jim Ross would coin that as a kissing your sister finish. So I'm going to just put that out into the internet. Meme at your leisure, but Ricochet kissing his sister should be something that we see trending. Just saying.
I'll take it. We also had news this week about Vince McMahon. It was reported that Vince was going to be visiting, and as of the day of recording, had visited the Performance Center, and he was going to be talent scouting for the main roster himself, checking things out.
Wait, he knows they have a Performance Center?
Apparently.
Shit.
I think he was just told about that this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were looking at budget cuts. He was looking at the budgets, what is this thing that we feed so much money to? Then someone explained to him, oh, it's a Performance Center, this thing they have in Florida. And he's like, I should check it out.
I should totally. Yeah. He probably does call himself in third person too.
What's going on here, pal?
And in order, again, because I hated this story so much, in order for people to understand why we're stressing this, that it's so weird, is that famously when NXT call-ups have happened, the story usually is that Vince has no idea what he's getting. One of I can't remember which one it was, one of the bigger call-ups, he just said to Triple H, give me your 4 best guys. He didn't say names or anything. He just, I need to do call-ups. We're going to spice up our main event stuff here. Give me your 4 best guys. So him showing up at the Performance Center is huge news.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. Shawn Michaels is one of the, head trainers there now, and he and Shawn have always had a very good relationship, it seems. And so, that may be part of it too. And they say that Shawn is one of the biggest advocates for the newer style of wrestling backstage, that he's kind of their champion back there. So that makes it interesting too. And we saw main roster dark matches on Main Event with Karrion Kross and Bronson Reed. We've also heard that Karrion Kross and Scarlett have had a couple of dark matches, both separately and together. And so maybe Vince was down there to check those guys out, kind of in their own element, see how they translate from NXT to the Main Event. It's just, like Brendan said, this never happens. And it's really interesting and really exciting that he might be taking a personal investment in it. Because when Vince wants to, he can do a good job. He's just gotten complacent and old.
It's just also terrifying because he typically has not been aware of the product down there, and that's what allowed it to be so good, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't want to take too much investment in NXT. Just when they call them up. So,
but it's part of the Peacock deal now, so he has to be more aware of it. If it performs well or badly, it reflects on him and that deal that he made. So, okay.
Yeah.
I saw this in our thing, and I'm still not ready for this news.
Yeah, who knows? I also believe Shotzi Blackheart had a dark match, or there was stories circulating that she was also getting a dark match. So, and that's another thing with all of the releases that have happened recently. They do need to kind of restock their rosters, especially say like for the SmackDown Women's roster, I believe only has like 6 active.
I think you're right. They have more active wrestlers on the SmackDown Women's division than they do in 205.
205. That's a whole conversation we'll have.
I just want to point out that like a lot of people. So it's very newsworthy on this because there's a lot of luchadors that have come through the 205 program. There are currently, after all of the layoffs, only 5 wrestlers, one of which is Brian Kendrick, that are active on the 205 roster. So we may be seeing those people going back to NXT or getting pulled up to the main roster. Those other 4 people are probably not going to see Brian Kendrick do a lot more wrestling at this point.
And there hasn't been an official word on exactly the direction of 205 Live. So either they're going to kind of replenish 205 Live with a lot of these newer signees that they've brought in, or people from the Performance Center who may not be at the level of NXT, but want to have them do something, or this could be how 205 Live slowly goes away. Apparently, with the views that they get on Hulu, it's pretty successful for the company. So not sure if that, if they're going to completely get rid of it, if it's somewhat lucrative, even a little bit.
They're under contract to have that show on Hulu for at least another year. So we will be getting something.
Yeah. I think it's just a lot more of these newer signees are going to be taking and stepping in to 205 Live. So that will be very, very interesting to see.
But back to the original point, Shotzi getting a tryout. She would be for a long time before this wave of firings. We were saying that the SmackDown Women's division needed an injection. So I've been counting my blessings every time we get another week of Shotzi on NXT, because she would fit in perfectly in the SmackDown program. She's athletic and interesting and a character just as much as she is a wrestler. So count the days. Enjoy Shotzi in NXT while you can, because I feel like we're going to see her feuding with somebody blonde in the near future.
Very true. Well, that is. Oh no, there's one more piece of news that we talked. This is just more, auxiliary news, but pretty good. Lindsay Dorado sighting on Raw.
Yeah, they came out, to congratulate Nikki. Again, he had that super cool 1998 style Kane-inspired mask. Looked incredible. Check it out on social media if you haven't seen it. If you follow me on social media, you've already seen it. It was fantastic.
Also, they haven't been fired. So, to what we were just talking about, we may see more of them in the near future. Yeah. It may not be great stuff, but
Yeah. It'll be exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, up next we have an MLW update. We had the final round of the draft happen this week, and a pretty interesting announcement as far as new signees. It was announced that Matt Cross has been drafted to Azteca Underground, specifically to Azteca, which again, the conspiracy theories and the boards with the lines and the charts are only growing.
He looks like a guy I saw on another show.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about real quick, is that Matt Cross has been with MLW before. He debuted with them back in 2004 and did work under the character Son of Havoc in Lucha Underground.
What?
I know. It just it's the stars are aligning. All these things are happening. It truly feels like the second coming of Lucha Underground, specifically with this signee. Yeah. They do also mention, he's an international wrestler. He's wrestled really 28 different countries, I believe. They don't necessarily, like something super broad, but they don't necessarily allude too much to the history with him and maybe Dario / Cesar Duran, just that he was specifically drafted under the Azteca Underground umbrella. So we will see what happens there. It is that he is going to wrestle as Matt Cross, at least now.
Sure.
Who knows, if that's going to change.
Yeah. He might put on a black hood. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know, but
yeah, I was super excited when I saw this, because one wrestler, Mil Muertes, King Muertes, whatever you want, could be a coincidence, but getting Matt Cross tells me, combine that with the rumor that they were filming in LA, it tells me they're really trying to recapture some of this magic, and just for people here, I don't know. Dusty I believe Matt Cross was on one of Wrestling Society X, was that?
Yes.
Yeah,
he was.
Which is another
TV show.
Yeah, which is another thing that Kevin had a hand in too. So, he has a huge lucha background, not just Lucha Underground, but
really a huge international background. I mean, he can really wrestle multiple styles, which is a perfect combination in MLW that highlights a fusion of different wrestling styles. But it does kind of go back to what you're saying, at least storyline wise too, make it feel like Azteca Underground is going to be its own identity, that with the addition of King Muertes and now Matt Cross, there's going to be enough reference to maybe the past that, I mean, man, it's just maybe just one of those unmentionables that everyone's going to know, but they're not going to say it, blatantly. It's just going to continue to be alluded to it, which, is kind of the fun thing. Again, kind of for smart wrestling fans to know, but for it to never be blatantly stated is kind of interesting. Yeah. We do also have an updated list of participants for the 40-man Battle Riot that's going to be happening on July 10th. We already mentioned King Muertes was going to be a part of it. We have TJP for Lucha related entrants. There's many, many more on here, but as far as Lucha related wrestlers, TJP, Gino Medina, Aramis, Eddies, Savio Vega, Lee Moriarty, Gringo Loco, and Zenshi have all been listed as participants. That doesn't even include, you have people like Calvin Tankman, Kevin Koo, King Mo, Hammerstone, the Von Erichs, Richard Holiday, much, much more. And of course, this is a 40-man battle royal. So, you never know who are going to be the surprise entrants, who is going to come back, and come back into the fold of MLW. It'll be very, very interesting to see how this Battle Riot folds out. We also did get confirmation that we are going to see Davey Richards versus TJP as part of the July 10th event. But this is coming up to be such a big return for MLW.
I always like to point out when we talk about the roster, Hammerstone may not be directly Lucha, but he has always been on the record on saying that he loves working with luchadors.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was just based out of Phoenix, just worked a Lucha show here this past weekend. He works regularly for Lucha Promotions here in Arizona and California. So he is a regular in the Lucha scene out here on the West Coast.
Yeah. So definitely keep an eye on him in that Battle Riot. He's probably gonna have some interesting, fun mix-ups with the luchadors that are involved.
We also got a new episode of MLW Underground this week. Very historic and pretty lucha-centric. This one featured Teddy Hart versus Bryan Danielson. I think this was his very first debut match.
This was billed as his debut in MLW, yeah.
Yeah. We also had Los Maximos versus Julius Smokes and Norman Smiley, which was actually a pretty fun match. And I just forgot, I haven't watched a Norman Smiley match in such a long time. But I just adore his energy. And, I know Norman worked in Mexico as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, there's just always, you just never quite know, how, who's crossed the border and who's had experiences in different places of the world. But that it was a really fun, great match, but especially being able to see Norman Smiley, how over he was with the crowd, his movements, but also just the little quirks that he did in the ring to get people going, I think is so undervalued.
Yeah, I loved that. I loved both of the matches on this, but I was definitely drawn in with that tag team opener.
Yes, the tag team. The other match, we had, it's hard. I'm trying to remember exactly how it pulled out. We had the Havana Pitbulls, but it wasn't supposed to be the Havana Pitbulls.
Yeah, I don't remember the holster. They were a replacement.
Well, they attacked the other team, which one of them being masked was, oh gosh, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the part where I was having trouble.
Yes.
Trouble too.
It was hard to watch. But anyways, this week's Underground, again, another great episode. The opening tag team match was great. The tag team match after that with the Havana Pitbulls, was fantastic. Again, there was some shenanigans, as the match started, which we were kind of talking about. But it overall, was great. And then you have a Teddy Hart promo, which I think equates to like a modern day Ultimate Warrior. I literally got some Ultimate Warrior vibes as I listened to that Teddy Hart promo. But at least the Ultimate Warrior had like more feeling in his promos.
Mm-hmm. There was a kind of magic with Ultimate Warrior's word salad, whereas Teddy, just kind of confused me.
Yes, I think that's the best way to describe it. It was kind of confusing, but it was, what was I going to say? It was the Havana Pitbulls versus the Stampede Bulldogs. We had, I think it was TJ Perkins or I forget. One of the Stampede, not Perkins.
It's not, it's not
no.
Tyson Kidd.
Tyson Kidd.
Yeah, Tyson Kidd.
I don't remember how he was billed before Tyson Kidd.
Yeah, it was like TJ Kidd or something.
Yeah. So Tyson Kidd was in that match, as part of the Stampede Bulldogs. And so, sorry, so much wrestling happening that, just should have taken better notes on this. But,
super lucha heavy episode is what we're, the breakdown.
Yeah, especially having the debut of Bryan Danielson against Teddy Hart. That itself too is pretty high profile. But again, I liked the opening tag match. That was one of my favorites for this week's MLW Underground.
It was really fun. I enjoyed that one.
Yes. So July 10th, MLW comes back, so make sure you stay tuned. We are absolutely going to keep our eye on this. Also, again, that could be the date where we find out more about Azteca Underground, so stay tuned to this show as we get more information about MLW and Azteca Underground. Up next, Brendan has a brief CMLL update.
Yeah, so CMLL is back pretty much in full swing, so just like I mentioned with the indie roundup, let me know how detailed you want the results to be. All of the results are available on Lucha Central. So you will, even if I don't read off the event that you're curious about, you will find it there. But they filmed TV this week. They filmed a Tuesday show. They filmed a Friday show. Friday shows tend to be the ones that are on pay-per-view, so that's where I'm focusing on right now. So at 6:25 we had a show. It was a 6-match show. I'm going to start halfway through the card. We had Kenserobo, Mephisto, and Raziel against Atlantis Jr., Panteria del Ring, and Panteria del Ring Jr. The team of Kenserobo, Mephisto, and Raziel, so, Team Hell, basically. They won. It's a fine match. CMLL has a lot of comparisons, in my opinion, to WWE right now. They have a really talented, deep roster that could do much more fun and interesting matches, but they do a lot of safe matches, and this is a fine example of that. You had 6 guys that could do a lot of fun things, a good mix of young talent and old vets. But it was interesting enough. You had Quattro, Forastro, and Sanson in the next one against Atlantis, Mystico, and Star Jr. Again, the Rudos came out on top on this one. So Quattro, Forastro, Sanson get the win on this one. And then the main event, you had Templario and Volador Jr. against Caristico and Virus. This was for the Torneo Incredibly de Parejas, which is why you'll notice that each team has a Technico and a Rudo on it. The team of Templario and Volador Jr. came out with the win on this against Caristico and Virus. Again, interesting, but they seem to be leaning on these incredible pairs right now while they have more of a diminished roster. So I was a bit less interested in this than the match right before it. And then on the Tuesday taping, which we got results on, there was a significant event that happened. Felino, who is, by wrestling standards, an old man, was able to win the CMLL or the Mexican Light Heavyweight Championship against Barbario Cavernario, which some people are speculating is leading into an Apuestas feud. So that's our brief results. As I mentioned before, we'll do socials at the end. You can let me know, or you can talk to anybody. Do you want more CMLL? Because between CMLL and IWRG, we could probably do a whole 2-hour show just on their programming. And then they do have a big pay-per-view coming up soon, which I do plan to cover. They're going to have the Leyenda de Plata tournament on pay-per-view. So it's currently only about $10 American to get it. If you want to see an interesting tournament, this is probably a good way to do it. Again, that's Ticketmaster Mexico. So if you need help figuring out how to order it, you can send me a message and I'll help you work your way through it. But yeah, that's our quick CMLL update this week.
Up next, we have a brief NWA update, specifically a promo from Mega Wolf and Bestia 666. They were on this week's episode of Power. They came out to cut a promo, really interrupting the tag match, 6-man tag match between Aaron Stevens, Captain Yuma, and Mims versus Kratos, Luke, and PJ Hawks. And La Rebellion, as they're still being called, came out and pretty much called out NWA in the tag team division. Quote, "You're making a mockery, not only of our sport, but those titles you're so desperately trying to hang on to." So, it looks like Mega Wolf and Bestia 666 are going to be staying around the NWA. Looks like they may be trying to challenge for the tag titles at some point. But I think that they are continuing to make a pretty strong presence within the NWA. I think they're being received well. And I think they're going to keep on kind of doing these types of interrupters. Like, they're not going to keep following any rules. They're going to keep doing what they want, how they want, when they want. And I think it's kind of a refreshing feeling to kind of do that within the NWA, which is much more known for having structure and tradition. I kind of like this feeling of Mega Wolf and Bestia 666 coming in and kind of turning it on its head a little bit, but still also putting an emphasis on good wrestling. So it's a little bit of a vibe of Legado de Fantasma, but not, because it's just more on them being super good competitors compared to the quality that they see in the NWA, and not so much necessarily focused on lucha libre, but it is a big part of their identity and their wrestling style. So I'm continuously excited to have this lucha libre presence on NWA. I think it's something that they're missing, and it makes, just adds some level of uniqueness to their product.
Super on point for the La Rebellion's brand to be doing what they're doing too, with just kind of speaking out and doing what they feel is necessary, because that's the history. La Rebellion was supposedly a group that broke off from a wrestling promotion in Mexico. I believe it was AAA, and did their own, because they didn't like what was going on there, and tried to create their own thing. So them bringing that whole spirit to the NWA is perfect, in my opinion.
Good. Again, NWA Power is available on Fight TV. It is behind a paywall, so you do have to pay, but they do have segments and clips available on their YouTube channel and on social media. Finally, as we normally do, we end on the note of Impact Wrestling this week. And really just two matches to make note of. One is TJP and Fallah Bahh versus Rich Swann and Willie Mack. On paper, this sounded really, really good, and it started off well, but just a few minutes into the match, Violent by Design came out and just annihilated everybody. So we didn't have a final, this ended with a no contest because everybody was eliminated. But it does make me think about, are we going to see maybe a triple threat match for the tag titles with Violent by Design? Maybe with Willie Mack and Rich Swann and TJP and Fallah Bahh. We see TJP not really in the X division right now. Rich Swann is out of the title picture, and also kind of his program with W. Morrissey has kind of concluded. So I am for this if we do get some kind of maybe triple threat tag team match somewhere along the line. But it's one of those things that it ended before you could get something really, really good. And then in the main event, we had a 6-man tag, Moose, Chris Sabin, and Sami Callihan versus Kenny Omega, Doc Gallows, and Carl Anderson. A thing to note for Lucha Libre fans, or not, this was just kind of an interesting way of presentation. But Kenny Omega, this time around, I feel like the first time in a long time, did not come out with all of the belts. First, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows came out with 2 belts. I believe Doc Gallows came out with the TNA championship, and Carl Anderson came out with the with the AEW World Championship. And then Don Callis came out with the AAA Mega Campeón and did a little Spanish speaking as he was representing apparently the AAA Mega Championship. So I don't know if that offended anyone in Mexico. I don't know. It's also, Canada Day today. So I don't, if that starts a war, I'm out of it. We were not involved in this. Strictly between Canada and Mexico at this point. And then Kenny Omega came out with just the Impact World Championship around his waist, which to me was kind of a strange look. Not in a bad way. I think it's great, but it was just one of those things that as this whole, title collector gimmick to me has lost its luster. You wonder, why are they continuously kind of doing this? And it was on an episode of Impact, so I get it. It's not a huge deal, but when you have so many titles, you can't even wear them. You have Don Callis wearing, the AAA Mega Campeonato championship, and, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows wearing your other 2. What's the kind of the point? So just a little thing.
I found it interesting, that, cause they pushed the images of this a little bit on social media, but he has the 2 belts representing this company, and he's wearing the Impact Championship, not the TNA Championship.
Yeah, so that's a whole other thing where really it feels like the TNA championship was just reactivated just to give Kenny another belt. The Impact World Championship is the much more recognized active championship. The TNA championship was a whole storyline that really Moose generated and got started and got over. And when this happened, if Kenny wanted to collect the belts, it didn't really, I think for them it was, or him or whoever, I'm not exactly sure who's all of the parties involved, but it was more, here's another shiny belt that you can wear and make nice, but really the company doesn't recognize the TNA championship as heavily as the Impact World Championship. I truly do think, I don't know how long this has been in the works, but almost at this, the TNA championship was just reactivated just so that Kenny could have something else shiny to wear.
According to an interview, I don't remember who was being interviewed at this point because it's one of the many weird. Because of all the multi-promotion stuff going on, this has all been mapped out for well over a year. According to, I think it was Tony Khan that said it. I don't remember anymore.
Well, and there has been stories in the news circulating that this has been planned out, mapped out to the point where they know already who, Kenny is going to lose these belts to, especially the Impact one, that they know they've already set that up. So, that does go in alignment with some of the other stories going around, though we don't know the specifics of that.
They're still being very tight-lipped about the details because it is one. So we can speculate that first time that Tony Khan made the whole, that the tides of wrestling are about to magically shift and then nothing really happened for months. Till months later, we can speculate that was when ink had dried on at least one of these deals. But that tends to support your theory that the Impact or the TNA championship was reactivated just to add more luster to this belt collector gimmick.
Yeah. And in that match, the team of Kenny Omega, Doc Gallows, and Carl Anderson won, with Carl Anderson getting the win. Doc and Carl Anderson landed the Magic Killer on Chris Sabin. And deep in this match, Moose and Chris Sabin are going to be facing each other at Slammiversary. So that tension played a role throughout the match and ultimately the end. Slammiversary is, happening July 17th still. We do have some, again, match announcements. It is official. Kenny Omega will be facing Sami Callihan, for the Impact Championship. Other matches are going to be announced. Another notable thing, and I really don't know what the relationship is between Impact and AAA, but Deonna Purrazzo did wrestle on Before the Impact, which is kind of the pre-show. They did not mention anything about her program in AAA. They didn't mention that she's going to be wrestling Lady Shani. They didn't mention anything about the TripleMania match that's coming up, though they did heavily promote New Japan. You did have New Japan wrestlers on there. They did mention that the Good Brothers were going to be going back onto New Japan television. So I know that AAA has not necessarily been embedded with Impact for quite some time, but I also think it's another way of essentially New Japan's making out good with all these U.S. promotions promoting them between AEW and Impact. They're getting a really good deal. But it also will make it very curious as they lead to TripleMania if they are going to have any mention of Deonna Purrazzo's match against Lady Apache.
It's not a good sign. I mean, that's supposed to be a belt versus belt match. They should be building that up, and it's like, because no matter what happens, whether Deonna Purrazzo wins or loses, they have to explain it after the match. So why the heck aren't they building? I did have one other question for you on clarification, because they said this on AEW. Did the Good Brothers are they in storyline? They're not officially Impact anymore? Were they released from Impact or by some authority figure?
No, they're still on Impact. Yeah, they're still listed.
I know there's.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Nothing that, the only person who was technically released, quote unquote, from their role was Don Callis.
Okay.
He was officially fired from his role at Impact. So the Good Brothers are still on contract, still listed as talent for Impact Wrestling. And that is, that's still, at least television wise, how it's still being presented. But I think that you do make a good point as far as television. That just happened, I believe, last week, where Don Callis was officially, again, fired from his role at Impact.
Yeah, on the AEW programming, they said that the Good Brothers were released from that other promotion, which could have been Impact or it could be New Japan. I don't know. So I was just trying to see if you had any insight on that.
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of. I believe they're still on TV Impact, unless that's more of a WWE dig. I don't even know. I don't even know anymore who AEW tries to go after.
That's the beauty of this whole thing is, they can do these little digs like that.
Well, that does it for this week's episode of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check out luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. Make sure to visit Lucha Central on social media, at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram, and at luchacentral.com on Twitter. You gotta check out the YouTube page. Lots of amazing content, including matches and interviews that you're not gonna find anywhere else. And of course, our episodes of our podcast that you may have to log in and do an age check. I did so good, and then I said ass, and then I don't know what happened. So.
I slipped and did one this week too when Vince was spotted at the Performance Center. Yeah. So
things could be worse. Yeah, sorry for all the parents we've disappointed. Trust me, mine have been super disappointed for quite some time. So I'm actually pretty good at that. Anyways, while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, where can our listeners find you?
I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy, and I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's the numbers 321. T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and I'm all over the Twitter.
And me, Miranda Morales, you can find me at the hashtag Miranda on Instagram and Facebook, hashtag spelled out. If you are listening to this show through one of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, Google Play, iTunes, iHeartRadio, whatever it is, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe so that way you get notifications every time a new episode of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast comes out. You can leave us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts. As we mentioned earlier in the show, do you want changes to the format? Are there certain promotions you want to hear more about or hear less about? Are there things that we're talking about that interest you, or are there things that we're not talking about that you wish that we did? Whatever that may be, make sure you leave us a review. Reach out to us. That way we know, so that we can tailor this show to you, the listeners. Thank you so much again for listening. For Brendan Barr and Dusty Murphy, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you so much, and we will be back next week.
Respetable público, lucharán a 2 de 3 caídas sin límite de tiempo.